G'day everyone, welcome back to the car game series part 3. This one's going to be all about levels. So this series is for people that might want to make their own Need for Speed Underground 2 or their own Forza Horizon. Or if you really take on my advice, maybe racing in city in car driving or extreme car driving car games. So let's get into it. So building tracks in Godot isn't as straightforward as it should be. First of all, it doesn't have an inbuilt terrain handler, and with the paths, I mean, I've had a little bit of difficulty with the paths, so that's why in episode 1 I told you to download these two plugins, but I'll go over them again. We've got Terrain 3D for the terrain. I mean, if you prefer to do this in Blender, do it that way and just follow the advice of the roads, maybe. And then another one called, I think it's Simple Roads or Godot Road Generator. So this one as well. I'm going to show you how to put that together to create something kind of nice and seamless, sort of blending between the two. So yeah, what we're going to do first of all is just download those two things and then we'll get started. Now, my main advice for this is don't work on the terrain until you're happy with the road. I sometimes don't follow my own advice and do both at the same time. And so maybe that's what you want to do too. But yeah, so we're going to create a node, call it roads. And another piece of advice is just make sure that you're constantly saving because this, when I was working at 4.3, this plugin was a little bit dodgy. So we're going to start with a road manager. I think this is how it works. And then we put in a road container. And then from that, we put a road point in, which is this. And that's the start of our road. So see, I just saved it then. Now what I'm going to do is click next road point. And what that does immediately is it puts a road out for us. Now, like I said, don't jump ahead and start putting things in. You need to make sure that you do this slow, do it in the right way. And take your time with it because you shouldn't really rush this part, right? So this is what 4 lanes of traffic. So we've also got to decide whether we want an on-road or an off-road game. Because I've done off-road before, we're just going to keep this default texture. But it's as easy as going to the road container and then just changing this material. So everything in there is already set up to sort of scale. So I wouldn't mess around with it too much. But by replacing it with, let's say like a dirt terrain or something like that, that's how you end up with interesting results like this because there it is. We sort of get this effect that's on the outside and that's kind of like stretching the shoulder lane. But I think it works for this off-road game because it kind of directs you back into the middle. Or at least that's what I'm going to say to cope with it for now. Alright, so immediately I'm just going to bring the road container up slightly. And this is obviously just going to contain our road. So we're just going to keep it off the ground. Now I'm going to put it at something that's easy to work with. Let's say 10 centimeters. So we can see the difference. But it's very slight, which is good. And see, the outsides of these roads actually go down by default, so they're actually going to meet underneath the ground. So if we wanted to turn that up a little bit more, we could. But I'm going to keep it low for now, just while we start. So in one of the previous episodes, I've already put this little blotch on the ground. So we're going to move past that. We're just going to continue going. So if we wanted to rotate this road, we hit the rotate button, and we just do that on this plane. So make sure you're not rotating this way too much because you end up with some strange effects. But we could drag this out as far as we want. So we're just going to create a little level real quick. We've also got these little, what do you call them? Little elbows or whatever. Save. And then we go. Also, the reason that we are not messing around with the terrain too much is because the more information you put in the terrain, the longer it takes to save the level. So if we are constantly saving because of one plugin and the other one is making it take a long time to save, we're just going to start with the one that we have to save a lot, and we'll switch over to the terrain when we're ready. So I'm just going to plop some points in exactly the same way as I did that. Okay, what is it? Select prior point. There we go, prior point. And then I'll cut back once I'm done. Cool, so now that we've got something to work with just for now, I'm going to show you a couple of things, a little caveats with using this plugin. So you've got to be mindful of things like this. Not all orientations that you come up with are going to work immediately of the roads. Sometimes you've got to move them around. Sometimes you can bring handles in. Handles, that's what they're called. That's what we'll call them. Sometimes you can even remove those effects by tilting the road upwards. So just be mindful about these things. Another thing we're going to do while I'm recording right now is lift one of these points up. So we've got a little bit of verticality to our level. And then maybe the next one we'll rotate it, pull it down. So we've got like a little hump. And then we're just going to stretch this one out a little bit, chuck another one in, stretch this all the way out over here. And then maybe we'll have like a cambered turn here. So I'm just going to save, wooden turn, going to turn. And then when we add one in, great thing about this plugin is that when you extend a road out, it extends it out in the direction it's already going. It's very roller coaster tycoon, I like it. It's very easy to get used to. And there is a way to do this with CSG polygons, a more traditional method, but I figured I would go into detail about this plugin specifically because I think that whoever's made it has done a great job of just making this process as least painful as possible. And I think it was purpose built for like an infinite road game. I think it's a little bit like Long Drive or something, so go and check that out too and get back to me. Because I am more interested in seeing its applications as like obviously a rally game, like in my other game that I'm working on, which currently doesn't have a name. Yeah, it does rally really well. So now that we're at this point, we'll save, and then you need to click this button here, and then hover over the start until you get that, and then we want to click there, and that's going to close it all up. So now that we've got that, we'll just fix sort of this area up a little bit. Maybe we've got to select that next point. Oh, select prior. We'll rotate this out a little bit. Yep, just so we get rid of those weird edges. We're going to try our best to get rid of them anyway. Might be a bit of a lost cause here. Oh no, here we go. So other things you can do is make the track smaller or wider. And generally I'm only really doing that to get rid of those effects. But another way to basically eliminate them entirely is just to get rid of the shoulder height. So we can actually have it coming up, but if you just set that to 0, then the track goes out flat, and it's sort of just like something that you get in the material. A little bit of weirdness, but I'm sure we could break that if we wanted to, but we're just going to, yeah, we're just going to be happy with that, be happy with what we've got. So let's see what that plays out like. There we go, we've got a track. Oh, we've still got our camera and a little driver moving around with his hands. Oh, we're going to play around with that physics of the G-forces because I think it's a little bit messed up right now. Maybe it's a little bit it's moving really quickly, isn't it? So we'll fix that up. But anyway, we've got the track. Oh, there we go. We've got the track. I'm pretty happy with that, and we can move on to the terrain now. So terrain 3D is an interesting one because a lot of the way that it works is when you've got the terrain 3D actually selected. So apart from sort of some of the materials, but you still have to have the terrain selected to mess with anything. So what I recommend doing first of all is I go to where is it? It's in the material, and you need to decide pretty early on whether you want a flat or no background. And because I'm sort of like imitating retro stuff, if I was to do an infinite anything, it would probably be done in a separate shader. So I mean, you can even blend, you know, the edge of the world in with the sky, like kind of really well, depending on the sort of textures that you've got set up on your terrain and how well you can make like little mountains on the edges. that sort of block out that horizon. But apart from all that, we're just going to start moving stuff around, adding in these extra little areas. Obviously all of our tools are over here. We just start with this one, which is the default raise. So if we save now, we see it's taking just an extra second to save the scene, but it's still an extra second that we're needing to deal with the save time. So I think that gets bigger every region that you add. So we're just going to raise a bunch of stuff, and I like to keep the track around 0 because then you don't really need to mess around. And also if you want to flatten anything, you could just go here and type 0 and we can get it right back to where it was before. So we're actually going to do that for here. I'm just going to make this a little bit smaller, maybe 30. Make sure that this track is cut into the terrain, kind of nice. And now if we would go and play that, we've kind of got this, what do you call it? We've already got an effect going where it kind of looks like the track is blended into the terrain a little bit. But what we're going to do with the rest of the blending is mainly in the textures. So obviously we've got little areas like this we need to fix up. And we need to add a more realistic hill there. So what we'll do, what I usually do, is I make the brush quite big and then I deal with the consequences. So what I mean by that is I'll do something like this just to cover the whole area, and then I'll either cut into it like we did before, or I'll just reveal it with a lower brush. So if you hold control in, it goes backwards. So raise becomes sink. Raise, lower, sink. Sink down, raise up. So I'm just going to reset all of that down to 0 there so it blends into the bottom. But then around here, and also if you hold shift it smooths. So this is a really useful tool. If we can just do most of our stuff by going up, down and smoothing, then we're dreaming. So we're just going to pull a little bit more of that out. Going to just turn down the strength maybe, about 10. Just cave this in sort of thing. Pull that back. Bring it forward just to hide that. So we could put models here, obviously, to hide these things, but I'm just going to do it with the terrain for now. So another thing you can do is flip over to these. I like this one and I like this one because they don't have any hard edges. You find that the hard edges, they're really, you see that? They come out in the brush. So what I like is this one because it just adds this sort of randomness. And if you're trying to imitate like erosion, you just go up, down, up, down. So you control and then regular, control, regular, control, regular. You can sort of add in imperfections and undulations into your terrain. And so I like to do this around the areas that you see kind of up close, because this area we are going to get quite close to. So another thing we want to do probably now is decide what color we want the terrain to be. So I've got do we have a textures folder? No, we're going to create a textures folder. And I've got a texture that I like. It's called cement.webp. I like this one. This is really nice. I'm not sure if it tiles or not. I can't even remember where I got it from, but we're going to use that. You can use basically whatever you want. I'd read up on Terrain 3D to make sure if your file type is actually going to work, because I have some problems with Terrain 3D sometimes, honestly. So I usually just work with a single texture instead of trying to set up multiple textures. And that's honestly just the new version. I had a bit of a grip on it, like in an earlier version, but this one just kind of confuses me. I can't be bothered figuring it out. But I get good results out of the way that I work, so I'm showing that, I guess. So we're going to just sink in a little bit more erosion, holding the control, and then not. You can see this going inverted every time I hold the control. You probably hear the control key, that one there. I'm just going to work this into that terrain. Now, we want to change the color of the terrain, probably to a yellow. We were all thinking it, like an orange, something like that. Or we were all thinking it, like grass, something like that. A little bit less saturated, a little bit more yellow. Bam, something like that. And then we'll make another one. We'll also drag the cement P over to that. Cement.webp. And then I'm going to change the color of this one to that brown color. So something around here, I reckon. Now, if we go paint that on, now see we're actually starting to create a world. And just like anything else that's sort of textured, you need to layer up. So don't think in terms of what you're doing right now. Think in terms of what it's going to be in the future. So I'm going to start with these little things. So honestly, I probably should have swapped them around the other way and then we could have had grass, but I kind of like the grass. Let's imagine we're in Europe or something. Sure. Now what we want to do is put the yellow here on that face. So what you can do is you can change this slope. So if I move that slope up from 0 degrees, it's never going to place on 0. So if your brushes aren't working as well, check here. Just make sure that all of your settings are right. But if I try and put it here now, so that's a little bit too intense. We go like that. Now if I try and paste this here, it'll work, but it won't go up the top. It'll only hit where the normals are that angle. So this is another really powerful way of just sculpting in specific things like that. Sort of limiting the range of where things can and can't be. So yeah, sure, we'll put like a nice little eyeball into the side of this mountain. Watching the player. Always watching. We're not sure what for. We turn that into a boob real quick too, if we wanted. Oh, we can't because it's on 0. Yep, let that be a sign. So we'll go put the rest over here. And now what you'll find is if you're doing this all over the place with these same parameters, it's actually going to start feeling more alive. So another thing that I like to do is, let's say we've got the grass. I like to add in a yellow grass. It's sort of like a dead grass. So we're going to do that next. We're going to get the cement.webp. We probably should be naming these, but whatever. Don't have to. Now this color, I'm going to go grab, right click, copy value. Over here, you click that little pencil, paste that value here.
Down to her last pencil. She has no more pencils in reserve. Everything rides on this pencil.
So I'm just going to grab that. We're going to make it yellow. I'm going to plop this back down to 0 so we don't override what we've already done. And then we're going to add in some little differences. So we can change that to 100. And obviously we're not going to override too much of what we've already done before. But then we start to sort of put a world together. Different colors. And what have you. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is just really quickly how to do meshes. You can do custom meshes, but you kind of just got to slap them in there and see if it works. What have we got? I've got like a OBJ. But a good place to start is just the default. So I'm going to actually just start with that. We're going to edit this. We're going to make this unique. And then we're going to paste that value in there. So now when I plop this down, I'm going to also make this 1000. I don't know if it makes a difference. Yeah, it's not making a difference. So I think that might be a bug with the plugin at the moment, where for some reason these default meshes, they've got what would you say? Their visibility is sort of a little bit broken, and it might change during the export. It might not. So I really hate those shadows too. We're going to turn the shadows off. I'm really not a fan of dynamic shadows. I like it better if the game can hold its own without fancy effects. So we're going to have a look at what that looks like now. Cool. And already it's looking a ton better. You know, just a little bit of textures, a little bit of undulations in the environment. Like I said, you start big, you start with the road, and then you start big just to cover it, and then you sort of get a little bit more granular with your brushes and stuff like that. So start big and then work it small. Work it, work it. Cool, so I've just imported tree03.fbx. We're going to see if that works as a mesh. What do? We drag that over to here, and then we should be able to plop these down. Cool. Now I've got a material for this as well. So if you've got a material, you could then drag it into that slot and override it. So without actually adding my material in, which is the difference, it's sort of green on the top and brown on the bottom. I'm just going to add a gradient texture to it. Why not? We'll add something, just something like that, just to cover both of those bases. Now I'm going to make this green. Yeah, that's green, and then I'll make the other side brown, because that is a good looking brown. And now if we just go place this around, I change this to 1,000, 10,000, 10, 310, whatever that was. Make this 100. And now if we start placing things down, make that strength 80. Also play with this, which is the fixed scale and the random height. Yeah, that's obviously why those bushes were so big. I was wondering why. It's already set to 400. And the random scale, we go 300, and then the random scale can be 200. We'll see what that looks like. And then we're going to change that slope again to just place wherever the hell I say to place it. I wonder if we can change this brown here to a more appropriate brown. I say brown. I am making this green more brown. So we're going to have a look at that. Looks great. We've got a tree in the middle of the road. I'll show you actually while we're here how to get rid of that. So I'm going to change this down to 10. We're going to hold control and just run it over the same. Exactly as before, because control is like inverted. And that's the thing I like about Terrain 3D. It's obviously made by people that use the plugin, because there's a lot of quality of life features in there. It's not perfect, and you can't export it. I'm not even sure if you can export these roads, but if you could bring it into Blender and then make your own terrain that way. So that's the tutorial. Let's have a little drive around. Look at the fruits of our labor. I hope you've played with your parameters from last episode more than I have, because his body looks bad. So next episode we'll probably add sound and particle effects and other funny little things. Maybe some gears, transmission. Not sure, maybe that'll be in the episode after. But this is looking pretty good. Look at that, the head wobble. There we go. So obviously we'd need to raise this bit as well. I'll just show you what that would look like. So we just go around the outside with a little brush. Sort of bring it up, smooth it, bring it up, smooth it. Just like that. So we just want to create that barrier there between the terrain and the terrain. Terrain, the road and the terrain. Just like that. And then we could get our little things like this. Make the height, what is it, scale, sorry. Make that 100. Random scale, 150, sure. And then we can go plop all these plants in. So you start big, like I said, and then you go small. So then we put in all these fine little details afterwards. Oh yeah, that's the area that we fell off on, right? So we just do this brush, probably. Lift it up. Oh, lost it. Lift it up, like that. Hold shift, sink it in, smooth it out. Bob's your uncle. Oh god. Camera's really rough as well with this, because it's looking like so far under the level. We smooth this out after we give it textures. Very nice. Smooth all this here. There we go, all around the edge. Make that barrier, smooth it out. Boom, just like that. Just like you're drawing, like Bob Ross. Happy little accidents. Alright, thanks for watching everyone. I hope, oh, that's not appropriate. I hope you enjoyed that episode. And we'll be back on the next one. The files for this will be available on Patreon. If you need any more help, you can hit me up on Discord. If you want really good help, I do tutoring or whatever. We can work something out. I'll walk you through whatever problems you're having. But yeah, let me know if you liked it. Make sure to subscribe. Bloody, 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 blah. See you guys next time.